Hello, it's me again. We're still in week one. This is chapter two. Remember, there are two chapters due in week one. They are due Tuesday by midnight, October 8th. So this is because, once again, that in lecture this week, we introduced the course and got going without being able to cover this material. So this video is in lieu of lecture. Hopefully lecture would be a little bit more interesting. So the objective here is to once again delve into the dietary guidelines and talk about what my plate really means. Your textbook does an amazing job of very clearly articulating what each food group contains and what's behind the dietary guidelines. Then we'll conclude with some information about food labels. So, to get us started, we need to talk about what your book refers to as the cornerstones of good nutrition. Other places I've seen it like this, the building blocks of good nutrition. So if you'll notice, your book has four cornerstones, four corners, and I have five building blocks. Variety. Variety refers to different foods within a food group. You can't just count all of your fruits as orange juice. Similarly, just because blueberries are good for you doesn't mean that's the only fruit you should consume. So a variety within a food group. Balance. You obviously cannot have a balanced diet if all you eat is pineapple. So we need foods from different food groups every day. Moderation. This is something we do not do well in America with our supersizes, with delicious foods. Honestly, that tends to be a problem many of us have. I know it's my personal issue with food. It's delicious. It's wonderful. We're foodies. And so appropriate portions can be a problem. This is why I like my version, the building blocks of a healthy diet, because I include calorie control. And sure enough, the dietary guidelines get at this in the 2010 edition. Adequacy. We're going to review some ways we can assess nutrient adequacy in this chapter. And it's important. They've been delineated clearly by sound science. So this is what those reference intakes are. Appendix B of your textbook, it's a short one-page chart that tells you the nutrient levels that are safe at different ages and genders. If you ever work for an institution with a federal dollar tied to food, you're going to have to know those. All federal food feeding programs require some analysis of these different nutrients outlined in the DRI. It's one way, certainly registered dietitians get some incredible job opportunities, but it's also a place for a chef to step up to the plate. So what these are all getting at is to maintain optimal health. And again, they're based upon sound science, refereed journal publications. So we can use them to assess diets to make sure a diet is healthy. So that is very different from the DVs, the daily values. Daily values are not updated as often as the DRIs because food manufacturers are involved. Imagine the food manufacturing machine that is America's food system and changing the laws and regulations that everyone has to follow. Well, these haven't been updated since 1989. I remember the hubbub surrounding this just as I was finishing up my dietetic internship program. And we knew consumers would be confused. So I think it's confusing. I know my family, my parents, and elderly citizens in my family have trouble understanding this, what the percent daily value is. It's actually only a percentage of that nutrient. So this is saying of the amount of fat a 2,000 to 2,500 calorie per day person needs, so someone, a reference person, who needs 2,000 calories, I'll show you in your term project, I've given you the background for this 2,000 calorie day reference person. but that person needs anywhere from 45 to 65 grams of fat per day. Well, 1.5 grams is 2% of that person's needs. So it has limited use, but it is good for comparing food products one to the other. So who published these dietary guidelines? Well, it was the United States Department of Agriculture, a huge government entity. The good thing is, the USDA is impacted, obviously, by politics. It's a presidentially appointed leader of that organization. But the Institutes of Medicine did the research to recommend these dietary guidelines. All of their reports are published on the link for the dietary guidelines I provided you. If you're in a writing class right now, this would be an amazing term project, because under the Dietary Guidelines for Americans report, the cover of it looks like that. You can find it on the link I gave to you. You click on Dietary Guidelines and look for the report from the committee, and you can find the consumer pamphlet, but you'll find an evidence analysis library. So these are evidence-based research. This is that consumer brochure I mentioned. This image is a bit off balance, but this image in a short few-page handout talking about those 4 categories that we talked about in Chapter 1, building a healthy plate, cutting back on sofas, eating the right amount of calories for you. Do you see why I wanted calorie control in the building blocks of good nutrition? And being physically active. Again, go to that link. It's key for you understanding the rest of what we're going to present in this course. So the recommendations are getting at all of the things we talked about in Chapter 1, that people don't eat healthy. We eat too many calories. Too many of us are overweight. Focus on nutrient-dense foods. That's what you're doing in your term project, and increase physical activity. The dietary guidelines say eat these more nutrient-dense foods. Of course, vegetables, dry beans and peas, legumes. We don't have to have a meat-filled meal every night. You can have a meatless dinner. Plenty of fruit, whole grains, nuts, seeds, seafood. You should be memorizing these at this point. Low-fat dairy. Foods containing sulfas, sodium, and refined grains need to be reduced. We need to improve nutrition literacy and cooking skills. Too many of our citizens are not hitting the kitchen at night, rather going through a drive-through window. The estimates are really all over the map, but most of what I've seen is somewhere between 4 and 5 times per week. Americans are hitting a restaurant of some sort. That's a lot of meals out. It's also very expensive. So part of these guidelines, again, established by research, handed to the federal government for publication, what they said was restaurants need to be encouraged to offer healthy foods. Do you see the opportunity here as a chef? So we have to reduce chronic disease. We have to control calories. We have to increase physical activity. Maintain this balance throughout the life cycle. Quantity and variety of vegetables. Eating a variety of vegetables. Half of the grains should be whole grains. Low-fat dairy, variety to include legumes, seafood. I'm doing this so hopefully you can memorize it. Replace proteins that contain sulfas with the lower fat versions. Replace oils with liquid oils versus solid fats. Increase potassium, fiber, calcium, and vitamin D. You see the role of the dairy group. Reduce sodium. There are the numbers. I've thrown them at Chef Chris, and we have agreed to professionally disagree. 1 teaspoon of salt contains 2,300 milligrams of sodium. So visualize a teaspoon added to a meal. That's all the sodium you need in the whole day. Realize food already contains sodium. Celery contains sodium. Celery is full of water. Salt follows water. This is why we salt or brine our meats, to pull in the water. So, sodium pulls water. So you get a watery food, it contains sodium. So you add sodium to your food, you're busted. It's over your budget. Select individuals, that's for anyone who's overweight or obese. That's a third of our nation. Anyone over the age of 50. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, chronic disease, only need 1,500. That means they have to take the salt shakers off the table. We need to consume less fat, replacing our saturated fats with monounsaturated fats. This is olive oil, canola oil, and polyunsaturated fats. This is what I call the assorted vegetable oils. Walnut oil being a very trendy one right now for its flavor and cooking characteristics. No more than 300 milligrams of cholesterol a day. That's one egg yolk. Can we have an egg? Can we have a 2 or 3 egg omelet? Yes, just not every day. Trans fats. We'll talk about fats more when we get there to the chapter, but trans fats need to be reduced. Our supersizes. Limit consumption of refined grains. This is very repetitive. You should be seeing a trend. Select a pattern that is appropriate calorie level for you. Prepare food safely. This is your food sanitation class. Balance calories. Increase fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, real food, and reduce processed food. The Harvard School of Public Health has a version of the plate where they explain it a little further. The Mediterranean Food Guide Pyramid is one of my favorites because look at all those fruits and vegetables, seafood, and at the top is red meat. And don't forget a glass of red wine once in a while. There are other pyramids, the Latin American pyramid, Asian pyramid. They all kind of get at the same thing. You can see that a healthy diet's pretty clear. Nutrition facts on food labels. We'll get lots of practice at this throughout the term. When we do carbs, fat, and protein all, we will review nutrition labels, understanding the daily value versus the nutrition facts. There are labeling laws, and some of this is very well described in your textbook. What is required of a nutrition label? It's one of the competencies for this course, is that you understand that. Percent daily value has to be listed on there. These follow legal definitions and they apply to all menus, something you might not have realized as a chef just yet. All of these show what the standards are. This is in your textbook very clearly. Allergens are also labeled nowadays, a good thing for people having problems with shell nuts. A lot of these are protein sources, so they are the allergens. Organic labeling is specified. Natural labeling is specified, a word used too often. And front of the package nutrition labeling, there's a section in your book about some of these programs. And what's interesting is that food manufacturers and food marketing companies are joining this bandwagon. And honestly, if you're entering the food industry at any level, I hope you see the value of you being involved. When the food manufacturers of America step up, I think it's time for the rest of us to let people know the nutrient content of their foods. So these are just some of those organizations.